Hello everyone. Tonight we'll step into the most brutal world of the Gilded Age, where childhood is ruthlessly stolen. The cries of starving children are swallowed by smoke, dust, and the dim yellow glow of the gilded city. This isn't a story of wealthy tycoons or lavish parties, but the fierce survival struggle of newsboys, abandoned amidst violence, hunger, and society's indifference. Forget dreams of a happy childhood, because the truth is, you wouldn't survive a single day in their shoes. Before you lean back and get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel, but only if you genuinely enjoy the content I share, and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. It's fascinating to see people following from all over the world. Now, turn off the lights, maybe switch on a fan for some background noise, and let's dive into tonight's journey together. And now, imagine you're no longer yourself. You're a scrawny child, lost in the Manhattan of 1892. No family, no hope, not even a name. You sit up, or rather, crawl out from under a blanket that 3 other kids are also tugging at. The bed you're on, if anyone still dares call it a bed, is really just a plank propped on 2 wooden crates, topped with a layer of crushed straw mixed with tobacco ash and some damp unidentified substance. You're freezing to the bone, covered in mosquito bites and fine coal dust floating around the room. No mattress, no pillow, no clean blanket. Just you, 10 other kids crammed into a room less than 10 square meters. No windows, no fireplace, and only 1 chamber pot for sanitation, currently overflowing onto the rotting wooden floor. The smell here is something modern science still lacks words to describe. A mix of sweat, wet shoes, half-burnt wood, spoiled food, and maybe even fate decomposing. The air is thick, clammy, like you're breathing inside a forgotten boot left in a basement. You huddle up, try to rub your eyes, but your hands sticky with something slimy. Don't ask, don't wonder. That's rule number 1. The screech of a streetcar whistle outside sounds like a scream signaling it's time to start another day, or rather, another round of survival. You're a newsboy, age about 11, maybe 12, if you count the winters you've survived. Name? You used to have one. Now they call you that kid, or hey you little runt. Parents? Maybe alive, maybe not. You haven't been home in months, and honestly, the place called home is just another damp basement a few blocks away. You live on the streets, sleep amid the shouts, the grind of wagon wheels on cobblestones, and the coughs of people who never see a doctor. You get up, tiptoe over the sprawled bodies. One kid's moaning with a fever, face flushed red, another scratching lice bites on his neck. You don't say good morning. No one does here. Your eyes sting from the smoke of a small coal stove in the corner. Someone lit it before dawn with wood scavenged from a trash bin near the docks. You pull on your coat, a greasy, dust-caked thing from last month, reeking of fried fat. It's too long past your knees, with a big tear at the side, perfect for letting the wind slice right into your ribs. Your pants are a prized possession, once an adult's, now cut short and tied with rope instead of a belt. Your shoes don't match, one's torn at the toe, the other's missing its sole, both worn down so you feel every cobblestone underfoot, but you walk. You have to walk. Because today, you've got a job. Yell out whatever's in bold on the morning paper. Even if you can't read all the words, even if you've never been to school, even if you don't really know what strike, war, or cholera means. You just need to shout, "Extra! Extra! Murder in Union Square," and hope someone stops to buy a copy. You rub your hands on your body, take a smoky breath from the stove, and open the door. The east wind hits your face like a slap. The street's full of fog and the smell of garbage. Vendors are shouting prices. Drunks are sleeping by the gutters. Cops are kicking a kid sleeping outside a bakery. And you, yes, you just officially started another day in the life of a newsboy in the Gilded Age. Are you ready? No one cares. You have to be ready. Or you starve. Or die. Or worse, get forgotten. Congratulations, you just woke up in New York, 1892, and there's no way back. Breakfast, if you're kind enough to call what you're about to eat breakfast, sits quietly in a dented tin bowl, so old the bottom's turned a rusty green. Inside is something grey and murky, thick like paste, but slightly thinner if you tilt the bowl to the left. It's porridge. Oat porridge made from the cheapest grain the neighborhood grocer keeps for newsies and stray dogs. No milk, no sugar, no salt. If you're lucky, there might be a stray raisin from someone else's meal last night. But don't get your hopes up. It could just as well be a cockroach. You don't have a spoon. The one you had was stolen last week, so you scoop the porridge with your hand. Your hand's dirty, of course, but everyone here eats with their hands. As long as you're not biting each other, no one complains. You blow on the porridge for the sake of hygiene, then shove it into your mouth. It doesn't taste awful, but it's not exactly edible either. It's like chewing a sad memory, bland, cold, and utterly hopeless. You chew without thinking. That's the best way to swallow. The bread on the side is a lump baked 2 weeks ago, hard as a brick. To take a bite, you have to slam it on the wooden table a few times to crack the surface. Then, use your front teeth to break it, if you still have front teeth. If not, you let it sit in your mouth until saliva softens it into a rag-like clump. The kid next to you is trying to pry the crust off with a pencil sharpening knife. Another just dips it in last night's vegetable washing water and swallows it whole. You don't laugh, because when it's your turn, you'll do the same. There's a small jug of water in the corner. You're not sure where it came from, but it's colored, not watercolored. The color of metal, time, and maybe a dead rat. You drink because you're thirsty, and you're thirsty because you coughed all night, your throat dry as newsprint. Rumor has it a boy on Mulberry Street once collapsed mid-shift from dehydration. They say he was still clutching a paper when he died. You don't want that, so you drink, and hope your fragile immune system doesn't quit today. If you had 2 cents, you could buy a watery coffee from a street cart, but you don't. And if you did, you'd need to save it to buy papers first, because papers are capital. Lose capital, you can't sell. Can't sell. No grey porridge tomorrow morning. A kid in the room is sharing a moldy piece of cheese he found in an Italian restaurant's trash. He hands you a piece the size of a fingertip. You nod thanks. No one says anything. Sharing food here is an unspoken rule. You give today, they might share tomorrow, or not. That's fine too. You don't eat to feel full. You eat to stay alive. There's noise in the hallway. Footsteps, someone shouting. Morning papers. Morning sun. Daily Times. You shove the rest of the porridge in your mouth. Wipe your hands on your shirt and stand up, even though your stomach's still empty. Even though you're not sure what you just ate counts as food. Even though you swallowed a small pebble in the bread. Doesn't matter. Breakfast's done. If you survive till night, you might get another bowl of porridge, and if you're lucky, it won't move. For now, you hit the street, because breakfast is the only thing you get for free here. Everything else, you have to scream for, and you're about to scream your throat raw. Good luck, but don't expect it to happen. No newsie gets a decent breakfast, and none of them have time to dream of one. You sling your coat on like a mandatory ritual, though it offers no warmth beyond the lingering scent of its previous owner. The coat isn't yours. It belonged to some man, some guy who died of tuberculosis in the Bowery, and when they carted his body away, the older newsies fought over whatever was usable. You didn't win the fight, but Mickey got the coat and sold it to you for 3 cents and a dry piece of bread. It was a good deal by local standards. The coat reaches nearly to your ankles. The sleeves are torn, buttons missing. The collar so frayed you can't tell what shape it used to be. The lining's black cotton, clumped into wads like rat fur. It's heavy, damp, and smells of old grease and cheap tobacco. But you wear it because January cold in New York spares no one, not even newsies. Underneath is the shirt you've worn for 3 straight weeks. It was once white, or something close to white, but now it's a muddy grey-brown from sweat, coal smoke, and nights spent under the docks. Buttons. 1 left. You tie the collar shut with a shoelace. Your pants aren't much better. An old pair of khakis, torn at the left knee, clumsily patched with red thread. The only color you could find that day, pulled from an old lady's coat while she dozed in church. The pants are baggy, held up by a thin rope wrapped 3 times around your waist. Every time you run, they slip a little, but you've learned to yank them up while shouting, "Extra, extra," without missing a beat. On your feet are shoes, if you still dare call them that. The left one's a boot, half its sole gone, exposing your big toe. You stuff straw in it each morning to keep warm. The right's a canvas shoe, the kind Italian immigrants wear, but its sole's worn down to the lining. You pad it with newspaper to keep out water, but yesterday's rain turned it into a soggy mess that sticks to your sock. Well, your one sock. The other was lost last week when you ran from the cops. accused of selling papers without a permit near City Hall Square. Your cap's a flat Newsboy cap, once held stiff by a metal rim. Now the rim's bent, flopping to one side like it's mocking you. It's stained with pork grease, a smear of dried blood, whose you don't know, and a few cat hairs. You don't wear it for style. You wear it to cover your hair. Your hair hasn't been washed in 2 weeks, and the lice have started homesteading. You don't feel the itch anymore. You're used to it. In your coat pocket, or rather the hole in the left side, is your most prized possession. A torn handkerchief used as a tissue, bandage, rag, and sometimes shoe lining. Next to it are 2 cents and half a peppermint stick. Someone tossed from a balcony last week. You haven't eaten it yet, saving it for a bad day. Maybe when you get the flu, or lose your job, or lose a friend, or lose hope. Though hope doesn't hang around much here. You catch your reflection in the bakery's cloudy window before you start hawking papers. You don't look like a kid. You look like a small shadow, moving through the cracks of the gilded city, arms clutching a stack of papers heavier than you, feet stepping carefully to avoid tearing your pants further, eyes looking straight ahead, but at no one. You didn't choose these clothes. They were handed down to you, from the dead, the forgotten, from an era that spares no one poor, but you wear them, because they're what you've got. And because in this world, having anything to cover your body already makes you luckier than the dozens of kids shivering under the Brooklyn Bridge. So you tighten the rope around your pants, pull your cap down over your ears, and step onto the street, because there's no time to think about fashion when you're busy wearing survival itself. You step onto the street, like stepping into an active battlefield. No horns, no drums, no warning, just the smell of smoke, shouts, and danger lurking from every direction. This is New York traffic, 1892. No traffic lights, no crosswalks, no kind cop directing at the intersection. Instead, you've got horse-drawn carts speeding by, iron wheels screeching on cobblestones, splashing mud, gravel, and sometimes horse manure in your face. You've got steam-powered streetcars on rails down the middle of the street. No proper horn, just a metal bell clanging like it's clearing a path for your demise. Every time you try to cross the street, you're betting your life on a drunk coachman, a lady pedestrian too busy lifting her skirt to look, or another kid who just fell because his shoe sole slipped off, but still grins to sell papers. You dodge a handcart, slip into a pile of dirty coal-black snow, and nearly get hit by a cop. He doesn't apologize, just glares and snaps. Get out of the way, you little pest. You're not mad. That's how the city says, good morning. The sidewalks packed shoppers, trash carts, sausage vendors, shouting prices, and drunks slumped against lampposts. You weave through the crowd like a rat, keeping your papers dry, and guarding the coins in your coat pocket. The pocket's torn, so you sewed it with rope and tucked it under your shirt, like it's your heart. At one corner, a horse cart swerves out of control onto the sidewalk. A mother screams, clutching her child. A newsie jumps over a trash bin to dodge, and you tumble into a mud puddle, still clutching your papers like they're your baby. You get up, knees soaked, coat caked with coal dust and dog crap, and keep running. No one asks if you're okay. No one stops. To the city, you're part of the scurrying margins. As long as you're not dead in the street, you're fine. Once, you saw another kid, maybe 9, get his foot crushed by a streetcar wheel. People crowded, shouted system, but no one helped. The kid just cried, then went silent. The next day, another kid took his spot on that corner. No one said a word. You learned that in New York, one misstep is a permanent one. There's no room for mistakes, no time for pain. Only move or be crushed. Traffic here isn't something you learn to use, it's something you learn to dodge. You have to memorize when the streetcar passes, which alley has pushcarts, which driver dozing by that tavern corner always turns left without signaling. No one signals, they just turn and wait for the screams. You have to know how to glide through near-death moments like a blind circus performer. Close your eyes, leap and hope. Every time you cross the street without getting hit is a small victory, but you don't smile, because right after, you have to keep running to make your paper deliveries on time. If you're late, customers will yell. If you tear a paper, no one buys. If a horse cart runs over your foot, well, don't even think about it. This morning, you have to cross Broadway, one of the worst places for a kid under 4 feet tall, weighing less than 60 pounds, to try surviving. There are beer trucks, double-decker horse carts, hand-pulled ambulances, and pedestrians who ignore everything. You look left, see a cart. Look right, see a cart. Look straight, see a drunk vomiting. You grit your teeth, lunge forward, dart like an arrow, sidestepping a horse cart, barreling toward you, feeling the wheels graze the air behind your neck. You hit the opposite sidewalk, panting, but you don't stop, because a newsboy never stops, can't stop. Not stopping means you're still alive. Traffic in the Gilded Age isn't made for kids, but you were never allowed to be a kid. You're a newsboy, a pest, an obstacle, a creature who learns traffic rules with sweat, blood, and instinct, and you just survived another crossing. Now shout, extra, extra, and don't get run over while you're at it. Fresh papers, hot news, murder in Union Square, kidnapping in 5 Points, big fire at the Brooklyn textile mill. You scream until your throats roar, until it burns like someone sprinkled salt, until your voice sounds like a taut string about to snap, and then you keep screaming, because screaming is living. If you don't scream, no one hears. If no one hears, no one buys. If no one buys, you starve. Simple, brutal. Every morning you clutch a stack of papers heavier than your hopes, run through the streets, stand at intersections, and shout headlines that hit passers-by like a sledgehammer. The more sensational, the louder you yell, even if you don't understand them. Corrupt mayor. You don't know what corrupt means. Cops in cahoots with gangs. You only know gangs beat kids like you. Steel magnate's secret lover exposed. You don't even own a pair of socks, but you shout, because people like those words. They don't buy news, they buy thrills. You're a batteryless, unpaid, unresting megaphone. Each shout squeezes breath from lungs weakened by dust, scratches a throat parched since 5 a.m. Some days you can't shout anymore, just whisper fresh news, here, in a raspy choke, but you still smile to seem cheerful. Every newsie has a trick. Tommy mimics an English accent. Pete dances like a clown when he yells, extra. You choose to shout loud and true. They say you have a voice like a cracked bell. You don't know if it's praise or mockery, but you live by it. Once you shouted all day without stopping, until blood seeped from your throat. You coughed it up, swallowed it, and kept shouting, because if you stop, another kid takes your spot. Good spots don't wait. By the train station is prime real estate. Near the post office, you sell fast. By the bar, drunks are easy marks, but only the loudest hold the spot. The weak-voiced get pushed back, to streets no one passes, to shadows. You've been pushed, had papers snatched, been punched in the chest for daring to stand near a bigger newsie's turf. You try not to cry. Crying doesn't help. Crying just gets you hit again. So you learn to shout from your gut, like the street singers you heard in Central Park. You stand tall, breathe deep, force out a screech like a steam whistle to hold your ground amid chatter, arguments, cart horns, horse whinnies, and wheels grinding stone. When someone turns to look, you thrust out a paper. Just a penny, sir. Freshest news this morning. You never hold their gaze too long, and they see you're human. They don't like that when buying from a scrawny, filthy kid. They just want the thrill of the headline, then walk away. You sell to the senile old man, the seamstress, the white guy in a cowboy hat, the black man fresh off a boat. You don't discriminate. As long as they have a penny, some days you shout cathedral fire, though you know it's yesterday's news. Some days, man rises from the dead, though it's just a fluff piece. Truth or lies don't matter. What matters is it sells. And you shout until your mouth's dry as ash, your throat scraped like a blade's been dragged across, your head buzzing like a kicked hive, but you keep shouting. Once a fancy lady stopped, tossed you a penny, and said, God, this kid's voice sounds wretched. You smiled, nodded, kept shouting. You don't know how many times you shout in a day. You only know that when the sun sets, when shadows stretch across the sidewalk, when you can't hear your own voice anymore, that's when you stop. Not because you're done, because your throat's given up. You don't need a clock, your throat's the clock, and it just ran out of time. So you sit on a stoop, close your eyes, listen to another kid shouting in your place. Their shout still rings, but there's something in it like you, like hunger turned to sound. You know tomorrow you'll shout again, though your throat's swollen, though blood seeps out in spurts, though you don't know if you're shouting for news or for existence. Fresh papers. It's not just a phrase. It's the scream of kids without childhoods, without classrooms, without homes, just throats and will, tattered but still sounding in a gilded city that never truly hears them. The people who buy papers are a cruel lottery. You play 10 hours a day. There's no predicting what they'll do. Some pay, some don't, some pretend not to hear your shouts. Some hear clearly, but walk past like you're a rock. And then there are those, the ones with money, fine hats, pristine gloves, who don't just refuse, they scorn, they glare like you stepped on their dress, or aren't clean enough to share their air. Once you handed a paper to a tall man, bushy beard, reeking of cologne. He took it, read it, then threw it back at you, and said, "Who gave you the right to touch my hand, you louse?" No penny landed in your palm, just the paper, falling into a puddle, soaked, unsellable, a penny lost. A penny's half a meal, and you bit your lip, said nothing. Because arguing means getting chased off the corner, or punched. People don't like being schooled by kids, especially kids not clean enough to stand near. An old lady pulled out a coin to pay you, but when she saw your dirty hand, no dirtier than hers when she washes dishes, but she forgets. She screamed like you'd given her the plague. "God, you touched me. I'll die," and she ran, leaving you with your hand outstretched while passers-by chuckled. A kid across the street yelled, "Oh no, he's got the plague," and you heard laughter ripple like waves. Surrounded by adults with money, clean shoes, and no trace of pity, you've had papers stolen. A big man with a square jaw grabbed your whole stack and walked off. You chased him, shouting, "Sir, give me back my papers." He turned, punched you in the face. No one helped, no one stopped him. You lay there, blood trickling from your lip, while he sold your papers at another corner. When you told a cop, they asked, "Got a permit to sell?" You didn't, so you were shooed away like the crime was yours, not the thief's. Sometimes, even the kind ones hurt you. A woman gave you 2 pennies instead of 1. You were thrilled, thanked her profusely. Then she paused and asked, "Where are your parents?" You told the truth. "I don't know. I live with friends in a tenement," and her face changed. No more pity, just fear. She grabbed her basket and ran, like you were a thief stalking her. You once sold a paper to a man dressed like a noble, voice like he was from a theater. He looked at you longer than usual, asked your name, your age, if you ever got cold, then he touched your shoulder and said, "Come with me, I've got a place to sleep and food." You felt scared. Instinct told you no. You refused, saying you had to deliver papers. He smiled, but the smile didn't come from his heart, and you ran. For the rest of that afternoon, you avoided that street. You learned to avoid long looks, learned to take money with 2 fingers, quick, no touching. Learn to smile just enough, but not so much they think you're begging. Learn to spot who might hit you, who'll curse you, who'll pretend you're invisible. Learn to make yourself small enough to be unnoticed, but loud enough for your shout to carry. Fresh papers, sir. Just a penny, ma'am. Hot news this morning. Straight from City Hall. You don't choose your customers. You don't have loyal regulars. Every day, you're a minnow swimming among sharks. One slip, and you're swallowed. Some tip you. An extra penny. A piece of bread. A pat on the shoulder. You remember each one like a tiny miracle in a soulless city. But they're rare. So rare you doubt yourself. You wonder, are they real, or did I imagine them? And anyway, you can't live on imagined kindness. You need pennies. You need papers. Sold. Even if your hands shake when you take money. Even if your lips split from a slap. Even if you have to bow, play mute, play dumb, play illiterate, to make them feel okay handing you coins. And as long as you're alive, you face that crowd, a mix of customers, good or bad, distinguished only by who has money and who's too worthless to look at. You're a newsboy, the city's blurry backdrop, a shadow carrying a shout through the streets, hoping someone turns, not to hit, but to pay a penny for what you've screamed all day, your own existence. A penny, it sounds small. Small enough that people toss it into puddles, drop it without bending to pick it up, or hand it to newsies, like you without a glance. But to you, a penny is everything. A penny is a scoop of porridge. A penny is half a stale loaf. A penny is the difference between sleeping in a tenement or on a stoop, between living till morning or freezing under a laundry's awning. Every morning, you take your entire capital, sometimes 5 pennies, sometimes 3, hand it to the distributor, and get a thick stack of fresh inked papers. You're not paid. No one hires you. You're an investor, a business, a freelancer, minus human rights. Sell the papers. You profit. Don't sell them all. You lose. No one takes back unsold papers. No one pities you if it rains. The news is dull, or you're too beaten to shout. You can't keep papers for the next day because old news is trash, so every paper you hold is a penny you bet. Every shout is a hope screamed out. Every headshake from a passerby is a small cut to your capital. Some days, you sell only half your stack. The rest, you burn a few for warmth. One you give to a feverish friend to fold into a pillow. The rest, you watch them soak in the rain, crumpled, then toss them into the butcher's trash pit. It feels like burning your own hand, but there's no other way. Every penny lost isn't just money. It's time, strength, a chance to live. You once fought over a dropped penny. The kid next to you stepped on it first. You grabbed, he punched, you scratched. Adults pulled you apart, threw you to opposite ends of the street. For 3 days you didn't look at each other. Then you talked again, because you both knew no one has enough to forgive or hold grudges long. Once, a well-dressed man tricked you, said he'd buy 5 papers, slipped you a big coin. You were ecstatic. Then you looked closer. It was a flattened bottle cap painted silver. You held it, trembling, heart sinking like you'd swallowed a stone. No one returned the papers. No one refunded you. You just stood there, eyes stinging, then walked on, heavier than the papers in your arms. A penny. People use it for candy, matches, dog biscuits. But to you, it's life. It's a whole exchange system. You trade sweat, shouts, calloused feet, and sometimes blood, for tiny dirty pennies. Then trade those for porridge, a bed, patched clothes, and tomorrow. You once hid 3 pennies under a loose brick behind the tenement, called it your survival fund. One day, the brick was flipped, money gone. You didn't cry. Just sat there, silent, as if staying still long enough would make the brick give them back. No one taught you money management. You learned through pain, through hunger, through trusting the wrong people, through nights washing your hands in rainwater, just to hold pennies cleanly, hoping buyers wouldn't see you as dirtier than the coin. Once, you spent money on something not for survival. You bought a candy, a round peppermint, wrapped in shiny paper. You sucked it for an hour, not daring to bite or swallow fast. You let it melt slowly, as if holding that feeling was holding childhood itself. You didn't do it again. Candy doesn't keep you alive, and you're not rich enough for memories. Every penny you earn proves you still exist. It's the world's way of saying you completed a task. Shout, run, take insults, stay silent, and got paid. Small, cruel, even if it costs a day without food. You look at the penny in your hand, dirty, bent, with dried blood from who knows who. You grip it tight, slip it into your inner pocket, where even if you're robbed, you might keep it. Then you stand, keep shouting, keep selling, keep living, because each tiny penny, to you, is a lifetime extended by a few hours, and sometimes, a few hours is enough to reach tomorrow. He sits at the end of the alley, on a low wooden stool, back hunched like a coat hook, mouth clamped on a never-extinguished cigar stub, eyes squinting, like he's judging the world through a pinhole in a tax ledger. What's his name? You don't know. Maybe Joe, maybe Hank, maybe no one calls him by name. To the newsies, he's just the old paper man, the morning paper distributor, there before dawn, counting pennies like they're drops of your blood. Every morning, you run to him before the clock strikes 6. Late, you lose your turn. He doesn't wait, doesn't remind, doesn't forgive. Papers are stacked in old wooden crates, covered with tarps, tied with rope, each bundle, 10 sheets. You hold out your money. He doesn't look at your face, just your hand. Miss a penny, you're pushed aside. No explanation. You once saw a kid hand over a Canadian coin by mistake, got cursed like a dog, and kicked out like walking trash. He doesn't care your name, your age, if you have a home, if you're sick. He cares only if you have cash, and are quick enough to grab papers without knocking over his stock. He says little, but when he does, each word's a broom sweeping your pride. Move it, louse. Don't drop 'em, idiot. Shout louder. You sound like a mute girl. Every newsie is a shadow passing through his hands, grabbing papers, vanishing. No one's name is remembered. You tried talking to him once, smiled, said, "Can I get 2 extra sheets? I'll sell fast today." He looked at you, puffed cigar smoke, and said, "You talk that much, you make an extra penny." You bowed your head. Didn't speak again. He's not evil, not good. He's a product of this city, hard, grey, cold, full of walking numbers. To him, newsies are ants, need papers. He gives, no money. You're gone. You thought he forgot everyone, until one day a kid collapsed right at his distribution spot. The boy coughed, crumpled, clutching papers, like they were his last breath. The old man looked at him a moment, then said, barely audible, "Another one," then turned away. No call for help, no water, no more words. You know he was a newsie once. Maybe true, maybe not. Maybe he shouted louder than you, got punched, picked pennies from under horse carts. And now he survived long enough to stop shouting. Just sits there, counting coins, handing out papers, watching you kids scream, like the world will collapse without fresh news. Sometimes you imagine him as a kid, a boy like you, hair messy, hands cracked, yelling hot news, amid horse carts and dust. But then you look again. He's there, same spot, same face, like a brick wall with a cigar, and you realize he's not that boy anymore. Maybe he buried that boy long ago, on some rainy morning when no one bought papers and his friend froze under a bridge. Each time you deliver sold papers money back, he doesn't ask how many you sold, he just holds out his hand. You give, he counts, nods, done, no thank you, no good job, no see you tomorrow. Your relationship is a transaction, no feelings, no ties. You once looked in his eyes, hoping to see something, empathy, regret, pity, nothing. His eyes are cloudy, as smog, looking through you like you're not there. He's the first person you see each morning, the one holding your lifeline, and the last you'd want to see if you had a choice. But you don't choose, no one chooses here. You just take the papers, run, shout loud, and hope one day you won't have to hold out your hand for sheets of paper to trade for hours of life. For now, you line up, wait your turn. His eyes flick to you like always, not knowing who you are, not knowing your name, but you remember him. His wooden stool, the scratch of his match, lighting the cigar, the clink as he counts pennies. And you know, as long as you're alive, shouting, eating watery porridge from paper money, you'll pass by his spot. Though he doesn't know your name, though the whole world might never know. The rain started at 3 in the morning, and it shows no sign of stopping. Not the romantic drizzle poets write about, but a thick, heavy downpour, like river water dumped on the city, icy cold, mixed with soot from factory chimneys, and grey grit from a sky reeking of rust. Each drop hits you like a small, steady slap, soaking you, reminding you your coat stopped being waterproof winters ago. You pull your cap low, clutching your stack of papers under your shirt, not for warmth, but to keep them dry enough to sell. Rain makes everything slippery. The sidewalks are slick with moss and mud, streets pool with ankle-deep water, horse manure floating like uninvited islands. You step carefully, as if crossing a minefield. A fall could tear your pants, break a bone, or worse, drop your papers into a black puddle, ending your day before it starts. But you keep going. It's Monday. Papers sell well. Early in the week, people crave fresh news, economic reports, weather updates, or who got arrested in 5 points. You don't have a choice. No days off, no bad weather. You have papers, and you have to shout. Snow? It's like rain, but subtler in destroying you. It doesn't slap your face like rain. It falls gently on your coat, melts, seeps into your back like a patient enemy. Your shoes, already torn from last season, get waterlogged. Each step makes a squelch, like a throttled heartbeat. You can't feel your toes, but you still run, shout, deliver on time. No pennies for quitters, and if you come back empty-handed, the old paperman just shrugs. Can't sell, don't come back. You saw a kid, smaller than you, collapse outside a church in a December blizzard. He clutched his soaked papers, hands frozen, lips still mumbling. Hot news. Passers-by stepped over him. Some looked, some didn't. By the time they dragged him inside, it was too late. The next morning, another kid took his spot. Life doesn't stop for a child down in the snow, and snow spares no one. Even when it's not raining or snowing, the wind cuts like a razor. New York wind is a taunting creature. It slips through torn coat seams, down your collar, through your paper-thin khakis. It knocks you over, scatters your papers, throws off your shouting rhythm. You once lost 4 sheets to a gust that blew them into the river. You chased them, slipped, bashed your head on a lamppost, bled. No one stopped. You got up, wiped the blood with your sleeve, and shouted again. Because if you don't shout, you don't live. On clear, sunny days, you don't get a break either. People go out to enjoy themselves. You go out to sell. They laugh and chat. You shout. They complain about wet shoes in the rain. You wish you had shoes to get wet. No holidays, no Sundays. No one says, hey, it's too cold, take a break. Because if you rest, another kid shouts in your place, stands in your spot, sells to your familiar customers, and you disappear. The newsie who doesn't work is replaced. Easy as swapping out old paper. The city doesn't remember, doesn't wait, doesn't care. You once dreamed of a day off. Just one. A nap. A full stomach. No shouting, no cursing, no shivering in the rain, like a forgotten lamppost. But the dream lasts 3 minutes. Then you wake, cold, and keep walking. Rain doesn't stop. Snow doesn't spare. Wind doesn't let go. The city doesn't care. And you, a kid too young to vote, but old enough to die of a cold. You keep walking, keep shouting, keep clutching papers to your chest like a piece of your soul. Not because you're tough, because you're not allowed to fall. You're a newsie. You don't get days off. You only get the next day, if you survive to see it. Where do you sleep? That question feels like a luxury to a newsboy like you, because you don't really sleep. You just shut down for a few hours somewhere without cops, gangs fighting for space, and most importantly, with a roof. Such a place is hard to find, never fixed, and never truly safe. Some nights you sleep on the bakery's back steps, between 2 big flour barrels, head on your arm, half a wet newspaper as a blanket, ears primed for footsteps. Because if the owner catches you, you're shoved awake and kicked to the street. Other nights, you slip into an empty freight car near the docks, where the stench of oil and dead rats weaves a symphony of decay. But it's fine. You've slept in horse stables, church backyards, under carts, in shallow sewers, and once, just once, in a damp tenement room with 6 other kids, when you had enough for a night's bed. Just one night, then back to the streets. You're not picky. You just need to avoid getting wet, frozen, robbed, or whacked by a cop's nightstick at midnight. You avoid certain places for sleep, like near the fish market, where the stench peels your skin, or under the Williamsburg Bridge, where addicts gather and steal your shoes while you're still wearing them. The worst is being woken by a patrol cop. They don't care how old you are, or what you do by day. To them, you're living trash, ugling the city, blocking pedestrians, taking up rat space. Once you just dozed off under a windowsill when a cop kicked you in the stomach, yanked you up, and barked, "Get out of here, you filthy kid." You coughed blood, could barely stand, still clutching your torn papers as if they'd leave you too. On windy nights, you find a sheltered spot behind the old print shop's wall where scraps of tarp linger from the afternoon market. You curl up like a stray cat, hands around your head, legs tucked, trying to stay warm by imagining you're on a pile of hot coals. On snowy nights, you seek a crevice between buildings, just wide enough to squeeze into, out of the wind. You once slept under a theater's staircase, where stagehands tossed piles of misprinted flyers each night. That was the only time you had a blanket of hundreds of crumpled papers. You draped them over you, their rustle like wind through a corpse. It was the deepest you ever slept, because you were too exhausted to know what you lay on. You've had shoes stolen while sleeping. Woke up, feet bare, frozen stiff, blood oozing from sidewalk cuts. You walked all next day barefoot, cursing in your head, crying in your throat, swearing never to sleep deeply again. But you sleep again, because your body can't keep running. Your eyes droop like an empty paper sack. Your legs shake like a half-burnt match, and you collapse, somewhere, safe or not. Your friends are the same. Each has their territory, an abandoned pipe, a factory awning, a hidden corner behind a monument. Whoever finds a good spot keeps it secret, because if word gets out, 3 other kids will cram in, and there's no room to breathe. On rainy nights, you're soaked like a drowned rat, teeth chattering like a xylophone. You crawl into a nook under a bank staircase, curl up, hug yourself, listen to the clack of heels passing, laughter, the rattle of horse carts. No one stops. No one asks, why is this kid sleeping here? Because they're used to it. A child sleeping on the street isn't tragedy. It's city furniture, like a lamppost, a manhole, a stray dog. When you wake, before dawn, you crawl up, rub your shoulders, tie your shoes, brush off your coat, and go sell papers, as if you woke from a warm bed, not a rat's nest at society's bottom. Where you sleep matters less than waking on time to shout fresh papers before someone else does. So you walk, eyes heavy, feet dragging, mind still wondering, where will I sleep tonight? And hoping, just a bit, for a place with a roof, no cops, and a few hours to forget. You have no home, no bed, no right to rest, like a real kid. You're just a little newsboy, and this city never sleeps, so neither do you. You have no family beside you, no one waiting for you at night, no hot meal or hug after a day of being screamed at. But you have them, the kids, the newsies like you. They're just as grimy, just as hoarse, dodging horse carts and east winds to trade pennies for survival. None of you have full names. There's Stub, missing a finger, Buttons, with one intact button on his shirt, the red-headed Irish girl everyone calls Firebug because she once set a market corner ablaze just to stay warm. Your friends don't ask about hometowns or parents' jobs. Those questions only hurt. They care if you'll share half a loaf, give up a sleeping spot in the snow, or shout for you when your throat's too raw to make a sound. You and them laugh when one mimics an English accent to hawk drowning stories in summer. You clutch your sides when another dances and sings hot news to a tune from a dented trumpet scavenged from the trash. And when one falls, they gather around, not crying loudly, just silently covering them with their own coats, sitting until the cart comes to take the body. None of you can cry freely. Crying weakens the others, so you learn to laugh. A laugh for those with no choice. A laugh to hide the tear in your heart. One day, Jack, freckled, gap-toothed, shared half a roll he'd been nibbling since last night, mouldy green, hard as stone, but you took a bite and swore it was the best thing you'd ever tasted, not for the flavor, but because it was shared by a kid as hungry as you. You once shielded Pete from a cop's chase, pushed him into an alley, blocked the way, lied that you were the one shouting cops coming, though you hadn't said a word. You took a baton to the back, bruised for a week, but Pete didn't forget. That night, he let you sleep in the coziest corner of the train yard, the best windbreak. No thanks, no hugs, just a nod. In your world, that's more than enough. Molly once tended you when you had a fever. She draped papers over you, wiped your forehead with her wet sleeve, sang soft Irish lullabies you didn't understand. But her voice was gentle, warm, enough to let you sleep soundly one night. You woke to find her slumped beside you, head on a crate, hair tangled like a bird's nest. You never forgot. Those kids are your family. Not blood, not kin, but bound by the same hunger, same shouts, same frosty breath in the morning. When you sell papers on the west corner, you hear Mike hollering across the street, his voice high, fast, full of fire. It makes you shout louder, not to compete, but to show you're still here, still breathing, still part of the pack. When you lose your sleeping spot, your papers, or get beaten black and blue, you don't go to adults. You go to them. They don't ask if you're okay. They say, I got a spot by the coal stove, or, take half this bread, I haven't bitten it. You live by those words. Your friendship has no letters, no birthdays, no promises. It's survival, hooked together on the edge of starvation and existence. No one says, I love you, but when a kid vanishes for 3 days, everyone goes quiet. That night, no one jokes, no one sings, no one tells stories. And when they return, bruised under the eye, back sore from a beating, the others just give them their porridge share, no questions. Because every kid knows, disappearing could happen to any of you. Sometimes you lie beside a friend, both shivering, legs curled, backs pressed together, hands clutching papers like blankets, and you think, we have nothing, but at least we have each other. And sometimes, that alone keeps you alive another night, because your friends like you are kids left behind in the Gilded City, and though you have no home, you have the pack, and to you, The pack is the only thing close to love. You've never stepped into a real classroom, never held a pencil to write, never heard anyone talk about grammar or math in your daily life. But you've learned plenty, not from books, but from cold streets, from shouts, from sidewalk punches and adults' icy glares. You learned to smoke before you could read a sentence, thanks to neighborhood men giving you cheap cigarettes, or from scavenging half-smoked stubs in trash bins. It's how you soothe a nagging cough, and how you mark your place among other kids. The one who smokes first gets a sliver of power in the pack. You learn to curse before pronouncing words right. Swears and crude talk echo like a soundtrack in every city corner, and you quickly memorize them, making them your language to defend or fight back in endless scraps with cops, thugs, or even your closest friends. You learn to lie, not because you wanted to be bad, but because you had no other choice. Lying to survive, to hold your spot in the brutal race of newsies, to keep every penny, every paper, to dodge random beatings from the old paperman or bloodthirsty cops. You learn to lie without blushing, without a flicker of shame, and sometimes you spun street stories to jack up paper prices or excite buyers, not knowing if the news was true. You learn to read the neighborhood signs, to know safe selling spots from dangerous ones, to avoid cops and gangs tricks. All these skills you learned standing on life's sidelines, observing, mimicking, trying, failing, and trying to survive. You have no teacher, no books, no desks, just a dark street, a sly, violent underground market. You learn to live faster than your age, growing up in moments when you should have been playing in a schoolyard. You learn to wipe tears when hurt, to laugh when cheated, to stand though your legs shake from cold and hunger. You can't read, but you know every street, every type of person, every potential enemy. You use your mouth to shout, eyes to watch, hands to grab the slimmest chance at survival. Before reading a line of text, you learn to read eyes, decode unspoken words, understand your pain and lack through every frosty breath in crowded streets. You're a child without a childhood, but the top student in the harshest school of life, where lessons are hunger, loneliness, injustice, and the rare, small smiles of those still strong enough to stand and shout again. Fresh papers, fresh papers. A day of delivering papers starts before the sun rises, when the city's still cloaked in thick darkness, with only a few flickering street lamps. You clutch a heavy stack of papers, running through streets thick with mud and garbage, dodging drunks staggering on the sidewalk, avoiding shouts of arguments and distant barking dogs. You yell, "Fresh papers, hot news," in a hoarse voice, not yet warmed from a fitful sleep in a freezing street corner. You try to hand out each paper as fast as possible, pausing only to collect coins before darting off, because every second's delay is money lost, a chance stolen, a street spot snatched by another kid. The buyers are all sorts. Some toss you a coin and walk off without reading. Some sneer and snatch a paper without paying a cent. Some just stand there, coldly watching you shout, but never reaching out. You learn to guess who'll pay and who won't. Learn to avoid those too drunk. Learn to talk fast to grab attention. And learn how not to get conned. But not every day goes like that. One day, you're nabbed by the cops. Not for doing anything wrong, just for selling papers where they don't want kids disrupting order. They call it selling without a permit. And in their eyes, you're a lawbreaker, a nuisance to be cleared out. You're dragged into a small, dark room where the smell of mildew and the stench of others locked up cling to you like armor you can't shed. In the cell, there are other kids, some older, some younger, also awaiting the absurd judgment of a society that rejects their existence. They interrogate you. What's your name? You stammer, my name, I. But the sentence never finishes because a cop cuts you off, shouting they don't need your name. They just want you off the streets and to warn other kids to stay away. You're held for hours, freezing, starving, hands and feet trembling. Each hour is a knife slicing into your childhood, making you feel smaller than ever. When released, you slump onto the sidewalk, head spinning, eyes stinging with tears that won't fall. You have no one to tell, no one to comfort you, just the cold streets and indifferent passers-by. But the next day, you're back, clutching papers, shouting loud, despite a raw throat and lingering fear. So you know every day, on the street is a battle. Today you deliver papers, tomorrow you might be arrested, and the day after, you might not dare return. You have no choice. only the right to exist and find a way to survive in the brutal world of the Gilded Age. And you'll keep shouting, keep running, keep dreaming of a day without fear, a day when your shouts aren't the cries of a stolen childhood. You're only 11, an age when you should be playing in a schoolyard, listening to a teacher read fairy tales, eating warm lunch with classmates, not standing exposed in freezing New York streets, shouting fresh papers, hot news, to scrape by with pennies. But you have no choice. At home, your mother works tirelessly in a textile factory, her hands calloused, eyes blurred from sleeplessness, while your 3-year-old sibling cries from hunger, and you can't stay to care for them. Your father left, or maybe died long ago. No one says, and you don't dare ask. Your family has nothing but a cramped tenement room shared with other families, reeking of mildew, coal smoke, and arguments that keep you awake. You're the breadwinner, the only one earning money for food, rent, even to pay off the landlord's debts. Your eyes, though young, hold unyielding resolve, because you know you can't fall. Each morning, you hit the streets before dawn, stomach growling, hands and feet numb, shouting to sell papers, one by one, penny by penny, fighting for survival. You remember your mother once held you after a long day and said, "You have to keep going, for your siblings' food." Her words were both encouragement and a blow, reminding you the burden isn't just yours, but the whole family's. You have no time to be sick or rest. When coughs come, you endure alone, not daring to complain, because a day off means no money, a hungrier sibling, a risk of eviction. You've seen kids like you give up, collapse on the streets, vanish quietly from this life's picture, unmentioned. But you can't. You carry a responsibility heavier than your small frame, and every penny earned, even just one, is a treasure. Once you thought of buying your sibling a small cake with your earnings, but seeing your exhausted mother by the bed, you swallowed tears and let it go. You know tomorrow, the next day, and days after, you must have strength to hit the streets, shout amid the chaotic crowds, ensuring no one in your family starves. You don't get to be a normal kid. Your childhood was stolen by shouts, the city's chill, days without room for dreams or sighs. But in those eyes, in that exhaustion, a flicker of hope remains, that one day, you won't have to struggle on the streets, that you'll return home, lie in your mother's arms, hear a fairy tale like other kids. Will that day come? You're not sure, because your life, from the start, was never easy, and you know you must keep fighting, not for yourself, but for the tiny family. You're the pillar of, the firekeeper, the only one who can pull them from the darkness of poverty and despair. You cough, a dry, racking cough that feels like each breath is yanked from your lungs with a burning rope. You cough until your lips crack, your throat burns like 1,000 glass shards, scraping inside, but you can't stop. You can't rest. In the world of news like you, coughing isn't a reason for sympathy. It's a sign of weakness. Weakness has no place on the streets. You know this, and you force out fresh papers, hot news, despite coughs choking you. People stare oddly. Some laugh, not with pity, but scorn. A kid coughing like that can still sell papers. An old woman passing by mutters, "Let him die. It's less suffering." You don't respond, because speaking costs pennies, a spot, your pride. Each cough is an imaginary blow to your head. Once, a big man snatched a paper from you, because a sudden cough threw off your rhythm. He looked at you. Weak kid, doesn't belong here. You swallowed tears, grabbed the paper, and ran like a loser. Coughing loses you customers. Once, a young man at a coffee shop, holding a paper, watched you cough until your face reddened, then turned and left without buying. Sometimes you cough so hard, you collapse mid-street, and passers-by dodge you like you carry a plague. You wonder if anyone cares about a coughing kid, or if they just see you as a thorn in their side, a nuisance to be removed. You went to a doctor with your mother once, when the cough wouldn't quit. He looked at you coldly and said, "This boy works too much." He prescribed bitter medicine you could barely swallow without skipping meals. Your mother couldn't afford it regularly, so you took it a few days and stopped. The cough didn't let go. Once, you lay in the tenement, burning with fever, sweating through your clothes, still listening for street sounds, scared you'd oversleep and lose your job. A roommate shook you awake at dusk, worried you wouldn't get up for morning deliveries. You know missing a day means starvation. You don't dare be sick, rest, or complain. This isn't a child's life. It's a war for every breath, every penny. Each cough is an invisible enemy stalking you. draining your strength and life. But you face it, fight it, shout loud though your throat screams for you to collapse in the crowded street. And when people laugh at your cough, you know the pain isn't just in your body, but in a world that's abandoned you, seeing you as trash, a number among the wretched. You crave a warm hug from your mother, a quiet bed, a break from mocking eyes and laughter. But you have no such right. You can only grit your teeth, bow your head, swallow tears and shout again, because silence means death. And if you die, no one will remember you, no one will cry for you, and this gilded city will keep spinning in its survival games, where the shouts of poor kids like you are just background noise no one heeds. You cough, you push on, you shout, because you're an 11-year-old with one dream, surviving today. You're used to death, but not the fairy tale kind with grand farewells, mourners, or incense. These are silent deaths, forgotten amid bustling streets, in airless tenements without windows, light, or proper burials. Some kids like you, weaker than you, collapse with no one to save them in freezing cold, when a tubercular cough steals their last breath, or when a runaway horse cart crushes them. Death for them is normal, an unavoidable part of this dark city life. One kid, you heard, died in a December blizzard, found curled in a trash bin behind a textile mill. No last words, no one beside them, no priest, no family, just ice and the smell of manure. People sighed and moved on, like it was just a forgotten sack on the street. You heard of another kid with scarlet fever, isolated from the pack, bedridden in a tenement, with no one to care for them, dying alone amid the quiet sobs of those too weak to help. No one came to the funeral. They just shut the door, leaving a cold body no one wanted to mention. These deaths don't make the papers, aren't discussed in taverns, aren't noted in grand buildings with chandeliers and red carpets. They're just smudges on a life's canvas the rich and powerful refuse to see. You've seen at least 3 kids in your pack near death. One, badly hurt dodging a horse cart, died for lack of medical money. Another got an infection from a small cut, worsened by no medicine and filthy conditions. The last, a year younger than you, vanished without a trace. Later, you learned they were arrested for selling papers without a permit and cast back to the streets like discarded junk. Death here is inevitable, but no one cares. You tried to cry when a kid from your group fell, but the sobs were drowned by others' shouts, the coldness of passers-by, the city's harsh silence. You learned to bury death in your heart, to keep living. You know you could be next, maybe from an untreated cold, a sudden fall, relentless hunger. You've seen your worn face in a mirror, bruises, early wrinkles, tired eyes that don't belong to your age. You know time is short. Every day on these streets is a gift that can be snatched away, but you can't stop. Stopping brings death closer. You're part of a giant machine, where nameless deaths are just tiny gears ground to dust. Without you, the machine keeps turning, spawning new kids, new shouts, new deaths, all ignored, unmourned, unremembered. You wish someone would tell your story someday, but for now, you can only live, and live in a world where death has no room for tears. Strike? For you, a newsboy barely in your teens, it's not a childish game or an excuse to skip work like adults might think. It's a fight for survival, the shout of kids with nothing left to lose but themselves, and a sliver of fragile hope. In 1899, rumors of a newsies strike spread fast through the city's corners, from Brooklyn's dusty streets to Manhattan's crowded slums. You heard the story from older kids in your pack, ones who'd been beaten, arrested, threatened, not just for selling papers, but for daring to speak out. At first, you didn't fully grasp what a strike meant, only that it was a collective stand to stop selling papers, to demand rights, to fight the injustice of stingy, aging bosses. In the days leading up to the strike, you saw groups gather in narrow alleys, whispering, planning strategies, sharing info like tiny city warriors. No official leader, no perfect plan, just raw determination and burning anger. On the strike's first day, you and your friends stood in the square, not selling, not shouting, just holding makeshift signs from old cardboard. You heard chants rise, slogans like, "We want justice," and "Don't exploit our childhood," echoing in the city's cold air, but not everyone supported you. Cops showed up with whips and clubs, breaking the crowd into fragments, arresting stubborn kids. You saw friends slapped, kicked, dragged off like wild animals, and your heart tore apart. No adults protected you, no laws stood by you. The city, with its glamorous, wealthy face, showed its brutal, cold side those days. Despite the pain, you couldn't quit. You saw the fierce eyes of the kids beside you, unafraid to face violence for a scrap of rights. The strike stretched on, spread wider. News of kids daring to fight the press machine split public opinion. Some pitied, some criticized or feared. You felt you were no longer a lone kid, but part of something bigger than you imagined. But what did you get? Beatings from cops, scorn from passers-by, days without a penny to bring home. You knew the cost of your rebellion. Some friends got kicked out of tenements, lost sleeping spots for being suspected leaders. You nearly got arrested shouting on the street, fleeing at night with a pounding heart and bloodied feet. But in every breath you felt the power of unity, the belief in a different future, however faint. You learned to strike isn't a joke, not youthful impulsiveness, but the voice of small people demanding recognition, respect. You realized you weren't alone, and that was enough to keep shouting, keep fighting, keep living. Even if you're just an 11-year-old, seeking a voice amid the smoky, cold-lit streets of the Gilded Age. You made the papers, not the way you dreamed of fame or being remembered, but the way newsies like you were seen by adults, as numbers, blurry black and white frames on inky pages. One foggy morning, after selling papers in a chilling drizzle, a reporter approached you. He asked your name, how you lived, what you thought of the recent strike, questions that made you hesitate, unused to anyone caring. You shared fragments of your life, your first days on the streets, the punches, the nights under bridges, the stubborn cough that won't quit. He scribbled your words, quietly snapped photos with a clunky camera you didn't understand, only knowing it hissed like a demon. The next day, your story was on a major paper's front page, but no name, no clear photo, just an image of disheveled, grimy kids running through crowded streets. Words mixed with a bold headline, "Street Kids Fight for Survival." You read, searching for yourself, an eye, a face, a snippet to say, I existed, but nothing, just part of a nameless crowd. You heard people call it the voice of the poor, of unnamed kids, but to you, no name, no photo stung worse than the hunger you'd endured. Some city adults, activists, journalists with passion, wanted to change the world, but to them, you were a tool for attention, not a real person. You heard that, after your story ran, those papers sold well. Some wealthy folks donated to child welfare groups, but no one sought you out, asked if you were still hungry, cold, or scared, standing alone on the street at night. Days later, you were still there, shouting, taking pennies, knowing your story was just a speck in the city's vast canvas. You saw other photos in the papers, glamorous faces of the rich, lavish parties, joys absent from your world. You understood you and the street kids belonged to separate worlds, divided not just by geography, but by an invisible, uncrossable line. Sometimes you imagined a clear photo of yourself in the paper, someone remembering you as a kid, not a fading shadow on a corner. But you have no nice photo, no clean clothes, no bright smile, just tired eyes, tangled hair, and a dirt-caked face. That's the truth you face. Yet you made the paper, got noticed, even if only as a phenomenon, a pitiful story, not a real person. But you know not everyone makes the news. For you, that's a victory, a faint echo of a voice. You keep shouting, running, living, hoping one day your shouts won't just be lines in a paper, but a story told with images and heart. A rare day you eat your fill isn't a tale of feasts or delicacies on a fancy table. It's a precious moment amid countless days of hunger and survival struggles. That morning, as fog draped the rooftops, an older kid in your pack shared a rumor. A charity group was giving out free bread and soup at a church near 5 Points, where kids as poor as you gathered. The news spread like wildfire, and you ran there with a flicker of hope. When you arrived, a crowd of men, women, and kids packed the old church's door, dim oil lamplight glowing through stained glass windows. You squeezed inside, smelling flour, carrots, and simmering meat. An older woman with a kind face handed you a hot, crusty loaf and a steaming bowl of soup. You stared at the crisp bread, steam rising, and the warm soup, feeling like you held a new world. You sat in a dark corner, hands trembling as you tore the bread, chewing each bite slowly, afraid to lose a crumb. The soup burst with flavor, not the watery gruel you're used to, but a warm broth, sweet with vegetables, and a hint of meaty salt. For the first time in weeks, hunger didn't claw at you, and the cold didn't pierce your bones. You looked around, saw other faces eating, eyes lit with hope despite the harsh world outside. A smaller, ragged, pale kid looked at you, and you gave them a bigger piece of bread than usual. No one made you do it. No one told you to put yourself first. It was sharing, empathy, among the wretched. That meal wasn't just food for your body, it was medicine for your soul, a reminder that even in a cruel world, small glimmers of kindness and hope remain. You left the church full, but your heart still heavy, knowing tomorrow would return to normal, running streets, shouting for papers, facing the world's harshness and indifference. But today, you rested in the dream of a full stomach, and that joy was enough to keep you fighting, keep you surviving in a city where your childhood never had a place. You looked at the grey sky outside the church window, silently vowing to yourself, you'll never give up, not for a day, a penny, or a rare full meal like this. Winter in New York isn't like anything you've known. It's not just cold, it's a silent fury, an invisible enemy, stalking you, stealing everything from the warmth of your skin to the tiny fingers and toes on your calloused feet. The cold seeps through your torn coat, your holey shoes, into your bones, making every step a trembling challenge. You thought you were used to cold, having survived many winters, but this year's different. Harsher, longer, merciless. Your toes go numb, stiff, purple. One freezing night, unable to find warm shelter, you lost part of your left big toe, the first mark of an uneven battle between your frail body and winter's cruelty. You didn't cry, didn't scream. You just curled up in a nest of old papers, hugged your feet, breathed white clouds, and thought about how to walk tomorrow with a piece of you gone. Winter takes more. It steals the little freedom you held, slowing your runs from cops or street thugs. You once slipped on thin ice, crashed onto frozen pavement, feeling every bone shatter, but you stood, knowing you couldn't lie there waiting to die. You know weakness is cost, losing your sleeping spot, your chance to sell papers, being left in the freezing night with rats and darkness. Some nights, you huddled with friends under a closed shop's awning, heads resting on each other for warmth, so cramped and damp you thought you'd suffocate, but it was the only shield from snow and wind. You remember a friend from your pack, Jimmy, who didn't survive last winter, frozen to the point of losing feeling in hands and feet. He caught a bad cold, no medicine, no care, and died in a heavy snowstorm. No funeral for Jimmy. No one remembered him but your small pack and a few strangers. His death was a cold warning to you and the others. Winter isn't a time to be weak or hesitate. You must be tougher than ever. Find any way to stay whole, even if it means losing a finger or part of a foot. You keep walking, shouting, living, because you have no choice. Winter takes more. Your hope for a better future, your faith in unfinished dreams, the childhood you never fully had, but it can't take the iron will inside you, the thing that lifts you each time you fall, makes you walk, shout, fresh papers, hot news. You're fighting not just the cold, but an indifferent society, growing injustice, and cold eyes seeing you as a burden. No matter how brutal winter is, you can't surrender. You must live, for your siblings, your mother, yourself, and a future you hope won't be so cold and full of loss. You lost part of your body, but not the rest of your humanity, and that's what keeps you from becoming a frozen corpse on New York streets. In the Gilded Age's winter of blood and tears, you no longer believe in Christmas, not because you've grown up or lost faith like other kids hitting their teens, but because life taught you that holiday is a luxury for the rich, not for newsies like you. You remember younger Christmases, hearing tales of Santa, gifts and bright streetlights, but those never came to you. Instead, New York's winter nights are freezing and dark. You wrapped in a torn coat, teeth chattering, shouting hot news on bustling streets, while others prepare lavish feasts. You have no gifts, no lights in your tiny tenement room, only sighs, stifled sobs, and loneliness soaking the air. But you believe in something else. Pennies. The only faith you hold, faith in the tiny coins you fight for daily, hourly, on the streets. A penny buys a dry loaf, pays for a flimsy sleeping spot, trades for a few hours by a meager fire. You clutch pennies like life itself, like hope that tomorrow you'll still stand, shouting fresh papers and surviving. You know each penny is a piece of hope, a sliver of power against hunger, cold, and the world's indifference. During Christmas, as people laugh and exchange gifts, you stand outside shops, staring at glowing windows, feeling a vast gap between you and that world. You see other kids, maybe the rich ones, carried, cared for, happy. You clutch your papers, purse your lips to keep from crying, and walk on silently. But you don't let yourself fall. You tell yourself one day, with enough pennies, you won't stand outside anymore. You'll live, be loved, join the world you dreamed of. Pennies are the only thing reminding you you're human, despite life stealing so much. One Christmas Eve, a generous customer gave you a penny that gleamed. Unlike the worn, dirty ones you usually get, you held it like a treasure, vowing never to lose it. In that moment, you believed in magic, that this penny could change your life. But the next day, it was gone, maybe dropped running through streets, or snatched by another kid when you weren't looking. You cried, but no one knew, no one asked. You learned to hide pain, to smile when others smile, to keep shouting, selling, living. You don't believe in fairy tales or Christmas lights anymore. You only believe in pennies, tiny gems, each one building a future you don't yet know. In the Gilded Age city, where glamour and cruelty intertwine, you understand only pennies buy the right to live, to dream, to exist. And you, with your small hands, keep chasing pennies, shouting headlines, holding that faith, though the world tries to snuff it out with ice and indifference. You stand there, amid the bustling crowd on Fifth Avenue, clutching a soggy stack of papers, throat burning from shouting without a moment's rest. Your eyes are weary, your calloused feet drag with exhaustion, but you must stand there, shouting loud, hot news, latest papers. But one thing you realize more clearly than ever, you see the rich, clearer than you see yourself. They, with their fine clothes, tall hats, polished shoes, and gold-trimmed carriages, pass by like gods on their street, utterly separate from the gritty world you live in. You watch them, their radiant smiles, confident eyes, hands casually holding money, not pennies like yours, but bills bigger than your stack of papers. You see lavish parties through gleaming windows of newly built skyscrapers, where crystal chandeliers light up elegant gowns, ruby red wine glasses, and echoing laughter. They live in a world so full, so abundant, it's unimaginable. Meanwhile, you live in a world of numbers, tiny pennies, nights under awnings, days of punches, curses, and abandonment. You feel like a ghost on the sidelines, unnoticed, unremembered, part of a vast canvas the rich never want to see. You recall standing outside a grand mansion hosting a lavish Christmas party. You stood there, peering through a frosted window, watching children receive gifts, hugs, happiness. Your heart felt crushed by utter injustice. Those kids had parents, homes, futures. You had only cold streets and a heavy stack of papers. You see the divide, not just wealth versus poverty, but an invisible barrier that excluded you from birth. They may not know who you are, but you know them, those high above, oblivious to the suffering and poverty swallowing kids like you. You don't hate them, you just feel small, weak, abandoned in this world. But deep down, you nurture a flame, a fire of determination, a hope that one day you'll see yourself clearly, not as a shadow buried in darkness. You know to do that, you must keep shouting, keep selling papers, keep living. You must turn your smallness into strength, your pennies into a path out of the shadow you've been buried in. And with each shout, each trudging step on cold stone, you believe that one day you'll stand equal to them, those you only knew through the gleaming windows of their gilded world. Until then, you're a newsboy on the street, seeing the rich clearer than yourself, carrying a burning desire that never fades. A day in the Gilded Age, for you an 11-year-old newsboy, can feel like an entire childhood, stretching like an endless chain of pain, cold, hunger, and relentless struggle. You wake before dawn in a tiny, cramped, damp tenement room where sunlight is a distant dream. You quickly fold your tattered blanket, wipe unseen tears, and prepare for a long day soaked in sweat and tears on New York's streets. Breakfast is a bowl of watery gruel or a hard piece of bread, not enough to fuel your small, wasting body. You wear ragged clothes, holey shoes, carrying a frail frame fighting the harsh winter cold. You step onto the street, where every step battles crowded horse carts, blaring trolley horns, and the cold stares of passers-by. You shout fresh papers in a hoarse, nearly voiceless rasp, trying to catch customers' attention, knowing not everyone is kind enough to buy or pay. Each paper sold is a small victory in your daily fight for survival. But behind the city's gilded glamour are brutal scenes. Kids like you beaten, chased from sleeping spots, harassed by cops, even jailed for daring to sell on forbidden corners. You flee biting winds, torrential rains, thick snows, shouting and dodging lurking dangers. Amid it all, you cling to fleeting moments of joy, sharing a moldy loaf with friends, telling creepy ghost stories, or singing upbeat songs in dark alleys. But when night falls, when you return to the cramped tenement, curl up in a thin blanket, and try to sleep for tomorrow's sales, you know your childhood's been stolen, trapped in an endless cycle of hunger and lack. You don't get to be a normal kid, with time to play or learn, space to dream of a future. Each day is a fierce battle with yourself and the cold world outside. Yet through all the hardship, you survive, you shout, you keep fighting, because every day you endure is a day you're not forgotten, a day you have a chance to change your fate, though the path is full of thorns and uncertainty. A day in the Gilded Age may stretch a lifetime, but you never let yourself fall. You're a tiny warrior, a child with a heart full of resilience, writing your own survival story amid the city's dazzling lights and enveloping shadows. Your dreams aren't the sparkling tales of storybooks, but fleeting visions during high fevers, when your body burns with illness and your mind teeters between clarity and delirium. Those dreams are the only escape from the cutting cold, gnawing hunger, and the world's indifference. You lie on a creaky tenement bed, sweat soaking your clothes, lips muttering stories you've never heard, eyes shut tight to flee the cruel reality. In your dreams, you reclaim a normal childhood, running through green fields, held in your mother's arms, laughing with friends without worrying about pennies or papers. You dream of Christmas with twinkling trees, gifts beneath, and joyful carols in a church. The images are so beautiful, so gentle, you don't want to wake. But reality yanks you back, noisy footsteps in the hall, shouts of other tenement kids, cold seeping through cracked doors, and faint light from weak oil lamps. You open your eyes, see the sky still dark, the ground wet from night rain, and know you must rise, don musty clothes, grab your heavy papers, and step into the cold to shout headlines, though your body's weak and mind still foggy. Sometimes fever makes you delirious, spouting nonsense, and you hear passers-by mock your state. But you don't care. In those dreams, you're a normal kid, uncrushed by poverty and violence. You dream of school, reading books, playing in parks, receiving praise and love. But dreams last only minutes before reality pulls you back. You feel each dry cough, each throat pang, each bone-chilling cold. You know you can't collapse. If you fall, no one stands by you, no one helps you up. You must fight alone, shout alone, scrape for pennies to survive. Those fever dreams aren't just a temporary escape, they're the only medicine keeping you believing that one day you won't live in poverty and cold. You hold those dreams like treasures, though they're fragile illusions, fading like mist at sunrise. But you keep dreaming, because in them, you're still a child, still human, and that's all you have. The hottest news today: you're still alive. You're still standing here, clutching a tattered stack of papers, voice strong enough to shout fresh papers, though your throat burns and limbs freeze. You've survived another day in a city where every moment could be a newsboy's last. You've endured torrential rains soaking your clothes, biting winds slicing your skin, cops' kicks, the richer's scornful glares, and merciless beatings from other kids in the trade. You've survived hunger's grip, unhealed wounds, coughs so long they seem to steal your final breath. You've survived freezing nights, makeshift sleeping spots, the cold embrace of loneliness and helplessness. Today's hot news isn't a big fire, a protest, or a street kidnapping. It's you, a small child, an unsung hero no one knows, still alive to tell your story. You've seen other kids fall, vanish, forgotten, but you're still here, shouting, running, fighting. You know tomorrow will be as tough, that winter still threatens, that pennies remain your most precious treasure, but you don't give up. You're not allowed to. Every day you live, you're part of this city, however small and faint. You see light in your tired eyes, you feel warmth deep in your soul, a small but stubborn flame burning through hardship and pain. You know that flame keeps you alive, keeps you hoping, keeps you dreaming of a future free from poverty and injustice. You can't change the world instantly, but you can change yourself, day by day. And today, the hottest news isn't in the papers. It's that you survived. You won another day in an uneven fight. You beat the invisible monsters of hunger, cold, pain, and loneliness. You're your own hero, a small but unyielding one. And as night falls, as the city lights up and street shouts fade, you can sit, breathe softly, and tell yourself, I survived. I'm still here. I haven't fallen. That's the hottest, most important, most precious news in the world. If you go missing, who'll look for you? It's not a philosophical or nostalgic question, but a chilling reality of life in this Gilded Age city. You, an 11-year-old newsboy, eyes weary, hands calloused, live in a world where disappearing stirs no ripples. No one calls your name. No one searches. No one asks why you didn't come home tonight. Family, you may have lost contact, or have none left. The cramped tenement, faces come and go like gusts of wind. You're a tiny part, easily swallowed by this vast, unjust city. If you don't show up on the street tomorrow, people will assume you quit or got sick. And if you're too sick to sell, few will notice. You heard of a kid in your pack who fell ill, bedridden for days, then vanished without a trace. Rumor said, cops arrested them, or loan sharks evicted them. No one searched, no one asked. They were as if they never existed. You know this, living in a world where lives, especially kids' lives, hold no value. If a kid in your pack disappears, the rest stay silent, avoiding questions. Asking doesn't help. It only deepens the pain of loss. You've seen cops on the street, watching kids scatter like wild animals, not to protect but to clear them out. You know they don't care if you live or die, just that you don't disrupt their order or business. You know if you don't come home, the tenement landlord will ask with contempt, then call cops to chase you off. You're a child abandoned in a world with no place for you, unless you protect yourself. You heard of a friend arrested for selling without a permit, then gone. Your pack only learned weeks later, when they didn't return. No one knows what happened. No one dared ask. You've wondered, if I don't come back one day, will anyone look for me? The answer seems to be no. But you must live, because not living is nothing at all. You strive to stay upright, shout loud, sell every paper, earn every penny, knowing one day you could vanish, and no one would say your name. You tell yourself that while you live, you'll leave a mark. Shout your voice through the streets, so those who might listen know you existed, fought, dreamed of another life. But you know in this city, your existence is fragile as a thread, and your disappearance would be as easy as a shadow fading in morning light. You can't rely on anyone to keep you alive, only yourself and your calloused feet. You must fight, shout loud, live long, so one day no one can say you vanished without a trace. Because if you go missing, and no one looks, no one will remember you were here, in this cruel gilded city, and that's your greatest fear, not death, but being forgotten. You're part of the giant gilded machine, called the Gilded Age, a city dazzling with lights and splendor, but hiding rusted gears, worn parts and forgotten souls. You, a small, dirty, ragged newsboy, aren't the shining light seen on grand avenues, where wealthy nobles host lavish parties with wine, classical music, and flowing silk gowns. You're the darkness behind closed doors, the shout echoing through grimy streets, the smell of coal smoke and dust in stifling air. People see this gilded machine, with eyes enchanted by wealth and power, but no one dares or wants to look beneath its sheen, where kids like you are crushed, pushed to society's edges, treated as invisible dregs. You understand that wealth is built on the toil of people like you, your shouts, sweat, even blood. But you're not a story told, not a figure in the glamorous picture they love to paint. You're just a tiny gear, essential but hidden in the machine's workings. Each day you feed the machine by shouting headlines, collecting pennies, keeping its relentless economy and society spinning. But it doesn't make you seen, doesn't make you respected. You're forgotten, overlooked, a nameless number in an endless ledger of the era. You've seen the rich pass by with powerful faces, ignoring orphaned kids curled in street corners. They don't see you, they don't want to. Maybe they don't know you exist. You feel the rust in the machine, the cruelty, the injustice, the the deep divide between rich and poor, light and dark. Yet the machine keeps turning, and you, however small, are swept into its whirl. You have no choice but to survive in a world where you're both victim and cog. You shout on the street, amid the city's din, its laughter, curses, and hurried footsteps of the wealthy passing by. Your shout is a sound rejected, a presence they want erased from sight. But you stand there, shouting, striving to survive in that rusted layer, in a gilded machine. No one bothers to look inside. You know you may never see true light, but at least you can shout your voice in this dark city, a small but unyielding shout, and that's all you have. If someone reads this story, will they remember you? Probably not. You're one of thousands, tens of thousands of orphaned newsboys, abandoned children in this vast city, lives marked by tiny dots, easily forgotten in the relentless flow of time. Names like yours never made it into history books. No portraits hang in galleries, no statues stand in the glittering streets. But if someone reads this story, small, imperfect, unembellished, they might see a piece of you in it. They'll feel the bone-chilling cold you endured, the persistent hunger that kept you awake, the faint shouts amid crowded streets, and the weary but unyielding eyes that never surrendered. They'll remember that behind the glamorous tales of the Gilded Age were thousands of kids like you, surviving the worst conditions society ever knew, fighting daily with frail strength and iron will. Though this story may not shake the world or make anyone pause to look at you closely, it's at least a reminder that you existed, not just as a number, but as a person with pain, dreams, and a brief but meaningful life. If someone remembers you, they'll recall how you shouted on the streets, shivered in freezing winters, clutched tiny pennies to buy survival. They'll remember your resilience against adversity, your bond with others in the same plight, and the silent sacrifices you made for your family and yourself. But if no one reads this story, if you're just a faint shout swallowed by the gilded city, at least you weren't silent. You left footprints on the streets, shouts in the air, your existence in a cold world. And if someone truly reads this, they won't just remember you, they'll see a reflection of survival, courage, and unquenchable hope in kids like you, small, frail, but never defeated. So whether you're remembered or not, know that your story has been told, and in some world, someone is listening, seeing you, holding you in their heart as an essential part of history. You're not an abandoned child, not an invisible ghost drifting through the streets, but a survivor in the cruel world of the Gilded Age, when kids like you were pushed to life's edges, crushed by poverty and society's indifference. You stood up, shouted, fought with everything you had. Your existence isn't an accident or random luck. It's proof of the extraordinary strength of human will. You overcame endless hunger, freezing nights without shelter, senseless beatings from merciless adults, and persistent tubercular coughs that could steal your last breath. You didn't fall when you saw packmates vanish one by one, unremembered, unmourned. You didn't quit, knowing each day was a battle between life and death. You're a survivor, not just in body, but in spirit. You carry invisible scars, silent pains. Only those who've lived it understand. You carry your story, not just street shouts, but a reminder of resilience, courage, and unyielding perseverance. You're not alone, though society may have forgotten you. You know you're not abandoned, but a pioneer, paving the way for future generations, for small revolutions in the city's heart. You're a witness to the era, bearing the weight of survival, holding faith in the darkest shadows. You're not a loser, but a victor, even if victory is just living another day, shouting another headline, clinging to fragile hope. And no matter what tomorrow brings, no matter the new challenges, you know you're a survivor, a warrior of life, an inseparable part of the Gilded Age's cruel but untold stories. You're not an abandoned child, you're a survivor, and that's all the strength you need to keep going. Thank you for reading these lines, words written for nameless kids like us, without pretty photos, or a voice in the Gilded Age's glossy papers. Thank you for taking time to hear a story no one wanted to tell, for offering a bit of compassion to see the small but resilient lives that shouted through dusty streets and clattering horse carts. You might be sitting in a warm room, with soft lamplight and a hot coffee, maybe reading this on a phone or computer, things we the newsboys of old never dreamed of. Remember, because of you, stories of the abandoned, shouts in cold nights, and stolen dreams are brought to light. Thank you for not turning away from the truth, for not letting these stories sink into oblivion. like the kids they're about. You hold the truth about children without childhoods, forbidden to cry, without warm beds, fighting daily to survive. But you also hold a powerful message. No matter how cruel life is, how many kids the world forgets, someone sees, someone remembers, someone retells the story. That's what warms and comforts us survivors, even just a little. Thank you for understanding that the pennies we clutched weren't just money, but life, hope, proof of unyielding will. Thank you for recognizing that behind every fresh papers, shout is a story of pain, but also strength, a tale of survival in an era where gilded wealth hid dark rust. If you felt pity, smiled, or shed a tear reading this, you've changed the world, at least in our minds and hearts. The world you live in now may not be perfect, but it's different from ours, when kids sold papers in crowded streets, with no labor laws, no protections, no healthcare. You may have clean water, toilet paper, schools, and dreams uncrushed. That's what we kids, from a dark past, wanted most, for future generations not to endure what we did. So thank you again. Thank you for not forgetting, not ignoring, not abandoning the kids pushed to history's edges. Thank you for giving us a chance to live again through these words, to be seen as people, not just invisible shadows. And if you want, share this story with others, so the world never forgets the choked shouts, calloused feet, and resilient souls of Gilded Age newsboys, survivors no one wrote about. The story of Gilded Age newsboys exposes a harsh truth about social injustice, extreme poverty, and the price paid by unlucky children. Details like shouting fresh papers until hoarse, enduring winters that cost body parts, or being forgotten in death, are vivid proof of an old society's cruelty we mustn't forget. Connecting to today's United States, though child rights, education, and welfare have improved, the story reminds us of modern poverty's shadows, children working, lacking education, abandoned or ignored in welfare systems. Images like cherished pennies or the loneliness of forgotten kids echo through time, urging us to care more for vulnerable groups, especially poor children. The story's greatest lesson is the need for compassion and social responsibility to protect and nurture the next generation. Ensuring children access education, safe environments, and support in hardship isn't just a legal duty, but a moral one for everyone in society. The story also stresses the importance of listening to and recognizing the voices of the abandoned, be they children, low-wage workers, or any group society ignores. In modern life, despite busyness, each person should offer genuine care to those struggling through volunteering, community support, or simple empathy and understanding. As the story shows, even a small newsboy has value and deserves to live in a just, compassionate world. If you found today's story meaningful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to catch more true stories about the resilience of unsung people. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video to explore more hidden corners of this arduous history.